Adil sat in the living room, nervously adjusting his tie as he looked at the clock. He was about to leave for work, and it was the first day he was leaving Mehak alone with Sana, his new wife. Sana had been kind to him ever since they had met, and he truly believed she would be a good stepmother to his little girl. But something in his heart didn't feel right. Mehak, his 7-year-old daughter, was still getting used to the idea of having a new mom. She missed her mother, who had passed away 2 years ago, but she didn't say it. She kept everything inside. "Mehak, I'm leaving for work," Adil said softly as he knelt next to his daughter, brushing her hair out of her eyes. Mehak looked up at him with tired eyes. She had been quieter these past few days. Maybe it was the change. Maybe it was the house. Maybe it was the new woman in their lives. "I'll be fine, Baba," Mehak whispered, her voice barely audible. She gave him a small, forced smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Adil kissed her forehead and stood up, glancing at Sana, who was standing in the doorway. She smiled at him, her face warm and welcoming. "Don't worry, Adil," Sana said. "I'll take care of everything. You focus on work." Adil nodded. He trusted her. He had to. His work demanded his attention, and he needed to make a living. He smiled at Mehak again and left the house. As Adil drove to work, he couldn't shake off the feeling that something wasn't right. He had seen the way Mehak looked at Sana, hesitant, unsure. And he had noticed how Mehak never seemed to speak up anymore, how she stayed in the background when they were together. But he told himself, it's just the change. She'll get used to it. At home, the house was eerily quiet. Mehak sat at the dining table, picking at her food. Sana was in the kitchen, preparing lunch. She didn't notice Mehak staring at her, her little hands shaking as she gripped the spoon. Sana hummed a little tune, unaware of the fear in Mehak's eyes. After a while, Sana came into the room, placing a large plate of food in front of Mehak. "Eat up," Sana said, her smile wide. "You need to grow strong. You're the woman of the house now, after all." Mehak stared at the food, unsure of what to do. She didn't feel like eating. She didn't feel like anything. She just wanted her old life back. The one where her mother had cooked her favorite meals, and they had laughed together. Now, everything felt strange and cold. Sana didn't wait for Mehak to start eating. She stood there, arms crossed, tapping her foot impatiently. "Why aren't you eating? I made this for you. It's your favorite, isn't it?" Mehak nodded, but she didn't move. Sana's smile slowly faded. "I don't have time to wait. You should be thankful." With that, she turned and walked back into the kitchen, leaving Mehak alone with her food. Mehak's hands tightened around the spoon, but she didn't eat. She just sat there, lost in thought, trying to understand what had changed. Hours later, when Adil came home from work, he found Mehak in her room, staring out the window. Her small face looked pale, and her eyes were red from crying. "Mehak," he called gently, stepping into the room. Mehak quickly wiped her eyes and forced a smile. "I'm fine, Baba. Just tired." Adil frowned. Something about her tone didn't seem right. "You sure? Sana told me everything was going well." Mehak nodded, but the sadness in her eyes didn't disappear. Sana appeared at the door, smiling brightly. "Everything's perfect, Adil. She's just adjusting. Don't worry." But Adil couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in his chest. There was something in the way Sana said those words. It felt forced. "Well, I trust you, Sana," Adil said, though he wasn't sure anymore. "But Mehak's my priority. If she's unhappy, we need to fix it." Sana smiled. "Of course, Adil. I'll make sure everything works out." Adil went to Mehak's side and gently brushed her hair from her face. "You don't have to pretend to be okay, Mehak. You can always talk to me." Mehak looked up at him, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. But she said nothing. Adil sighed, gave her a soft hug, and kissed her forehead. "I'll be here for you always." As Adil went to bed that night, he lay awake for a long time, thinking about the change in Mehak. He thought about how silent she had become, how she didn't seem like herself anymore. He trusted Sana, he really did. But something inside him told him to watch carefully. Cliffhanger. Later that night, Adil woke up to a strange sound. It wasn't loud, but it was there. He quietly got out of bed and followed the sound. It came from the kitchen. As he got closer, he heard a voice he didn't recognize. It wasn't Mehak's, and it wasn't Sana's. He froze, listening. Then he saw something that made his heart race. Adil stood in the hallway, listening to the soft sound that had woken him from his sleep. It was coming from the kitchen. He frowned, confused. He had thought he heard a voice, but it wasn't Mehak's. It wasn't Sana's either. Slowly, he tiptoed toward the kitchen door, making sure not to make any noise. As he peered around the corner, he saw something that made his heart beat faster. Sana was standing at the kitchen counter, her back to him, talking to someone in a low voice. Adil's eyes widened as he saw a small figure standing next to her, Mehak. But it wasn't a normal conversation. Mehak was holding a dirty cloth in her hand, her eyes on the floor. She was trembling slightly. Sana's voice was cold, though it was quiet. "I told you to finish the work, Mehak. I don't care how tired you are. You think your father is going to help you. He doesn't care about you. You're nothing to him." Adil's breath caught in his throat. Did Sana really say that? He wanted to rush in, to grab Mehak and take her away, but he couldn't move. His feet felt stuck. He could hear the harshness in Sana's voice and the hurt in Mehak's. Mehak didn't say anything. She just nodded, her shoulders shaking. "I'll finish it, Auntie," Mehak whispered, her voice so small it was barely audible. Sana clicked her tongue. "I don't want your 'I'll finish it.' I want you to do it now. Don't make me ask again." Adil's heart broke as he saw Mehak begin to clean the floor, her small hands working quickly, trying not to make a sound. She looked like a tiny servant, cleaning the kitchen without a single word of protest. Adil's stomach twisted in knots. This wasn't the Mehak he knew. She had always been full of life, full of energy, laughing and playing. But now she seemed so quiet, so sad. What was going on? Adil's mind raced. He couldn't just stand here and watch. He needed to confront Sana, to find out what was really happening. But first, he needed to make sure Mehak was safe. He quietly backed away from the door, his heart racing. He had to be careful. If Sana found out he knew, she might do something worse. The next morning, Adil acted like everything was normal. He went to work, trying to push away the images from last night, but they stayed with him, gnawing at his thoughts. He couldn't stop thinking about how Mehak had looked, how defeated she seemed. When he returned home that evening, he found Mehak sitting alone in the living room, her eyes red and puffy. She was holding a teddy bear tightly in her hands. Her small body seemed so fragile in the big chair. "Mehak," Adil said softly, kneeling in front of her. "What's wrong? You don't look like yourself." Mehak didn't answer at first. She just looked at him, her eyes full of sadness. "Mehak, you can tell me anything," Adil said gently, trying to encourage her to speak. "If something's wrong with Sana, you have to tell me. I'll make it right." Mehak looked down at her hands, her fingers nervously twisting the teddy bear's ear. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Adil felt his heart break. She was scared. Why was she scared of him? He reached out to touch her arm, but before he could speak, Sana entered the room with a bright smile. "Adil, you're home early," she said, her voice sweet and friendly. Adil stood up, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Yes, I wanted to check in on Mehak." Sana's smile didn't waver. "Oh, she's just fine. She's probably tired from all the chores. You know, keeping the house clean is a lot of work for a little girl. But she'll learn, won't you, Mehak?" Mehak didn't respond. She simply lowered her head. Adil noticed the dark circles under Mehak's eyes. She looked exhausted. Something was off, and he knew it. "I'm going to speak to Mehak alone for a moment," Adil said, his voice firm. Sana gave a small smile and walked out of the room, leaving the two of them alone. Adil sat next to Mehak, his voice soft but serious. "Mehak, I need you to tell me the truth. It's Sana treating you badly. Are you unhappy?" Mehak's eyes filled with tears, and she looked up at her father. Her voice shook. "I'm sorry, Baba. I didn't want to make you sad." Adil's heart raced as he placed his hand on her shoulder. "Mehak, you can never make me sad by telling me the truth. I want to know if something is wrong." Mehak hesitated. Then, in a quiet voice, she said, "She tells me I'm useless. She says I'm only here to work. She doesn't let me play like I used to." Adil's face went pale. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. How could Sana say these things to his daughter? "Mehak, I'm so sorry you've been going through this," Adil whispered, his voice full of pain. "I promise you, I will fix this. No one will treat you like this again. I'll protect you." But even as he said the words, a cold fear crept into his heart. He had to do something fast. Mehak couldn't live like this. But what could he do? Cliffhanger. That night, after Mehak had fallen asleep, Adil sat alone in his office, thinking about what to do next. He had to act fast. But how? He thought about the conversations he'd overheard. He thought about the hidden camera he'd installed earlier that day, just in case. Then he clicked a button on his phone. He watched the video feed. And what he saw made his blood run cold. Adil couldn't sleep that night. His thoughts were racing. Too many questions spinning in his mind. What was happening to Mehak? Why hadn't he noticed sooner? Why had she been so quiet, so sad? The images of her small, trembling figure in the kitchen, clinging the floor, haunted him. And Sana's cold words kept echoing in his ears. "You're nothing to him." Adil shook his head, trying to push the thoughts away. No, he couldn't let this go on any longer. He had to protect Mehak. He sat up in bed, staring at the ceiling. In his mind, he replayed the things he had seen. It was clear that something was wrong, but he didn't know how deep it went. He needed more answers. He needed to understand what was happening when he wasn't there. Then he remembered something. Earlier that evening, when he had been talking to Mehak, she had pulled something away quickly, a notebook. He hadn't thought much of it at the time. But now, it seemed important. It wasn't like Mehak to keep things from him. Adil got up quietly, careful not to wake Sana. He walked to Mehak's room, the house silent except for the creaking of the old floorboards beneath his feet. He opened the door slowly, trying not to disturb her. Mehak was asleep, curled up under her blanket. The soft light from the window made her look peaceful, but there was something about her that didn't feel right. Adil tiptoed over to her small desk, where he saw the notebook. It was placed carefully, almost hidden, under a pile of school papers. He picked it up and opened the first page. The handwriting was small, messy, like it had been written quickly. "I hate this house. I don't know why Mama left me here. Auntie doesn't love me. She says I'm a servant. She tells me I'm not allowed to laugh or play anymore. I miss Mama so much. Why doesn't Baba see what's happening?" Adil's breath caught in his throat. His eyes blurred with tears. His little girl had been carrying this pain alone, and he hadn't noticed. He turned the page, reading more. "Today, Auntie told me to clean the whole house. I was so tired, but she said if I didn't do it, Baba wouldn't love me anymore. She said I had to be perfect, or I wouldn't be allowed to stay." Adil felt a tight knot form in his chest. He didn't want to believe it. He didn't want to believe that Sana, his new wife, the woman he had trusted, could do this to his daughter. But the words in the diary told a different story. "Baba asked me today if I was okay. I wanted to tell him the truth, but Auntie looked at me with angry eyes. I'm scared. What if Baba doesn't believe me? What if he gets mad at me?" Adil's heart shattered. Mehak had been afraid to tell him. She thought he would get mad at her. Adil wiped his eyes, taking a deep breath. This wasn't just about what he had seen. It was about what he hadn't seen. He had been so busy, so caught up in his own life, that he hadn't noticed his daughter's pain. But now, he couldn't ignore it. He turned the page again, and the next words made his blood run cold. I saw Auntie yelling at the neighbor today. She said I was useless and would never be loved. I don't think I'm supposed to tell Baba. I think she's going to send me away. Adil slammed the book shut. His hands were shaking. He couldn't breathe. The thought of Mehak being sent away, treated like this, made him want to scream. He was supposed to protect her, but how could he have let this happen? The tears were hard to hold back now. Adil sat down on the edge of Mehak's bed, staring at her as she slept peacefully, unaware of the storm that was brewing around her. He kissed her forehead softly, whispering, "I'm so sorry, Mehak. I should have seen it. I should have protected you." His mind raced with thoughts of what to do next. He knew he couldn't just confront Sana without proof, but he couldn't let his daughter suffer anymore. Adil's thoughts turned to the camera he had installed in the living room the previous day. He had wanted to keep an eye on things, just in case. Now, he knew he needed to see the truth, once and for all. He stood up quietly, placing the diary back on Mehak's desk. As he walked toward the door, he glanced back at his daughter. "I will fix this, Mehak, I promise." Later that night, after Mehak was asleep, Adil sat alone in his office, staring at the screen of his laptop. He opened the camera feed from the living room, his hands trembling slightly. He had to know if what he had read was true. The video feed showed the living room, silent and empty at first. Then he saw Sana enter the frame. She walked over to the couch, her movements sharp, as if she was angry about something. Adil leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the screen. Then, the door to Mehak's room opened. Mehak came into the living room, her face pale, her body hunched over as if she were trying to make herself smaller. Sana turned and snapped at her voice sharp and demanding. "What are you doing out of bed? Go back to your room and finish your chores." Mehak didn't speak. She just nodded, turning back toward her room without a word. Adil felt his heart break again. This wasn't right. He couldn't let this happen anymore. The next moment, Adil's eyes widened as he saw something that made his blood run cold. He watched as Sana stood up and walked to the kitchen, muttering something under her breath. Mehak had followed her, but this time she didn't go quietly. She stood at the door, tears in her eyes. "What's wrong?" Sana said, her tone cold. "I don't feel good," Mehak whispered. Sana's face twisted in anger. "I don't care if you feel good or not. There's work to be done." Adil couldn't watch anymore. He stood up and grabbed his coat. He had to act fast. He had to do something before it was too late. Adil's heart was pounding as he stepped out into the night, his mind racing. He had seen enough. There was no turning back now. He had to stop Sana from hurting Mehak, no matter what it took. He drove quickly through the streets, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. The cold night air seemed to match the chill in his bones. How could I have let this happen? Adil thought, the guilt eating away at him. How could I not see the signs? As he turned onto their street, his thoughts were filled with only one thing. Mehak. He had to protect her. He couldn't let her suffer anymore. The thought of what Sana had been doing to her made his blood boil. How could the woman he loved treat his daughter this way? He arrived home and parked the car outside, taking a deep breath before getting out. The house looked quiet, too quiet. He could see the light from the kitchen flickering through the window, but everything else was still. Adil walked up to the front door, his footsteps echoing in the empty night. He wasn't sure what he would do when he confronted Sana, but he couldn't wait any longer. He had to know the truth, even if it meant losing everything. When he stepped inside, the house was silent. He could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy, as if something was about to snap. He walked through the hallway and into the living room. Sana was sitting on the couch, her eyes focused on her phone. Mehak's absence felt strange in the room. It was the first time he'd noticed how quiet it was without her laughter, without her little voice. Sana didn't look up when Adil entered, but he could feel her eyes on him. There was a coldness in the air now that he hadn't noticed before. "Adil," Sana said, her voice smooth, like everything was fine. "You're back early." Adil didn't respond immediately. He stood there, staring at her, his anger simmering just beneath the surface. "Where's Mehak?" he asked, his voice steady but with an edge. Sana looked up, her eyes widening for just a second, before she quickly masked her surprise with a smile. "She's in her room, sleeping. She had a long day." "Is she?" Adil's voice grew colder. "Or is she hiding from you?" Sana's smile faltered, but only for a moment. "What are you talking about, Adil? I'm just taking care of her." "No, you're not," Adil said, his voice rising. "I've seen what you've been doing. I've seen the way you treat her. I know what you're saying to her. You don't care about her, Sana. You're using her." Sana's expression shifted, a flash of anger flickering in her eyes. "I'm doing what's best for this family. You think I'm just being cruel. You're not here, Adil. You don't see what it's like to take care of her, to raise her." Adil took a step forward, his fists clenched. "I'm her father, Sana. I should be the one raising her, not you. But I didn't sign up for you to treat my daughter like a servant." Sana's smile turned into a sneer, her voice dripping with contempt. "You don't get it, do you? She's just a little girl. She needs to learn her place. I'm helping her. I'm teaching her discipline." Adil's heart skipped a beat. "Discipline?" He spat. "Is that what you call it? I call it abuse. You're breaking her, Sana. You're tearing her apart." For a moment, there was silence between them, a heavy, suffocating silence. Adil could feel his pulse racing. The words he had read in the diary, the tears in Mehak's eyes, all of it came flooding back. He couldn't hold it in anymore. "You've made her feel worthless, Sana," Adil said, his voice shaking with emotion. "She doesn't feel like she can come to me anymore. She thinks she's alone. And that's on you." Sana stood up suddenly, her face twisted with fury. "How dare you accuse me of this? I've done everything for this family. And this is how you repay me." Adil took another step forward, his eyes hard. "I'm not repaying you for anything. I'm protecting my daughter. You don't get to hurt her anymore." Sana laughed bitterly. "You really think you can stop me, don't you? You think you can just waltz in here and play the hero? You don't know what I've had to do to keep this family together, Adil." Adil shook his head. "You're not keeping this family together, Sana. You're destroying it." Before Sana could say anything else, Adil turned and walked down the hallway toward Mehak's room. He didn't care if Sana followed him. He wasn't going to back down. Not now. He opened the door to Mehak's room and stepped inside. Mehak was sitting on her bed, staring out the window, lost in her thoughts. She didn't even look up when Adil entered. Her small body seemed so fragile, so broken. Adil's heart twisted in his chest as he approached her. He sat down next to her and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "Mehak, I need you to listen to me, okay?" Mehak slowly turned her head, her eyes red from crying. "Baba, I'm sorry." Adil pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "No, Mehak, don't apologize. You didn't do anything wrong. You don't have to be afraid anymore." Mehak's tiny body trembled as she clung to him. "I don't want to live here anymore, Baba. I don't want to be with her." Adil's heart broke at her words. He had failed her, but not anymore. "You're not going to be with her anymore," Adil whispered. "I promise. We're leaving this place, Mehak. You and me. We're going to be okay." Sana's voice echoed from the doorway. "You can't just leave, Adil. You're making a huge mistake." Adil didn't turn around. He was done with her. No, Sana, you're the one making a mistake. He stood up, pulling Mehak gently by the hand. We're leaving. Now. Adil's mind was racing as he held Mehak's hand tightly, leading her out of the house. Every step felt heavier than the last. His heart was pounding in his chest, but there was no turning back now. The door was closed behind them, and with it, his old life. The life where everything had seemed normal, before Sana, before the pain. Mehak's small hand was warm in his, but it felt fragile, like a tiny bird that could break if he wasn't careful. She was walking beside him, but her eyes were still filled with fear. She had never been in a situation like this before. She had never left the house at night, never faced her stepmother like this. Adil could see the worry in her eyes. Baba, where are we going? Mehak asked softly, her voice trembling. Adil looked down at her, offering a reassuring smile, though he didn't feel reassured at all. We're going somewhere safe, Mehak. I'm going to protect you. We're going to be okay. He didn't know exactly where they would go, but he knew he couldn't stay there any longer. He couldn't leave Mehak in that house, not with Sana there. Not with her cruelty hanging over his daughter's head like a shadow. As they reached the car, Adil opened the door for Mehak, helping her inside. The cool night air was biting, but it didn't matter. He was focused, determined. They had to leave. The thought of returning to that house made his stomach turn. He got into the driver's seat and started the engine, his hands shaking slightly. The headlights cut through the darkness as he pulled away from the house. He glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the house shrinking behind him, its dark windows staring back at him like eyes. Mehak was silent beside him, but her eyes never left the window. Adil couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. What kind of father lets his daughter live in fear for so long? Mehak, Adil said, trying to break the silence. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I'm sorry I didn't protect you before. Mehak turned to look at him, her eyes wide and full of sadness. I didn't want you to be mad at me, Baba. I thought you'd get angry if I told you. Adil's heart shattered at her words. How had it come to this? His little girl, too scared to ask for help, too afraid to trust him. He reached over and gently took her hand. You don't have to worry about that, Mac. I'll never be mad at you for telling the truth. I'll always protect you. I promise. The words felt like a vow, something unbreakable. Mehak seemed to relax slightly, but Adil could see the fear still lingering in her eyes. She had been through so much already. He had to make it right. He had to fix it. The drive was long and quiet, the city lights passing by like shadows. Adil didn't know exactly where he was going, but he couldn't go back home, not to the house he had shared with Sana. Not now. They needed space. They needed time to heal. Finally, after what felt like hours, Adil pulled into a small motel on the edge of town. It wasn't much, but it was a safe place, at least for tonight. He didn't care about anything else at that moment. All that mattered was getting Mehak away from the life they had been living. He helped her out of the car, and they walked inside. The receptionist, an older man with a friendly smile, gave them a key and a room number. Adil paid him in cash, not wanting to leave any trace behind. As they made their way to the room, Mehak looked up at him with wide eyes. This place is different, she said softly. Adil smiled at her, though it didn't reach his eyes. We're going to be okay, Mehak. You'll see. This is just for now. We'll figure everything out, I promise. They entered the room, and Adil locked the door behind them. It was small, but clean. The bed was made neatly, and there was a small table with 2 chairs. It wasn't home, but it would do for now. Adil sat down on the edge of the bed, his thoughts racing. What would he do next? How would he explain all of this to Mehak? And what about Sana? He couldn't just disappear without facing the consequences, could he? But his first priority had to be Mehak. She needed to feel safe again, to feel like she could breathe without the weight of fear hanging over her. He turned to her, and for the first time that night, he saw a small glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Mehak," Adil said gently, "you don't ever have to go back there, okay? You're not going to be hurt anymore." Mehak nodded, her lips trembling as she tried to hold back tears. She crawled up on the bed beside him, curling into his side. "I'm scared, Baba. What if she comes after us? What if she says we can't leave?" Adil wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. "No one is going to hurt you, Mehak. I won't let anyone take you from me. We're going to stay safe, and we're going to be okay." As he held her, Adil's mind raced with the challenges ahead. There was no going back to the way things were. He had made a choice, and now he had to live with it. There would be no easy solution, no easy answers, but for the first time in a long while, Adil felt like he was doing the right thing. He wasn't sure how he would handle the legal battles or how he would explain things to his family. But none of that mattered right now. All that mattered was that Mehak was safe. She was no longer living in fear. And he had kept his promise. For the first time in what felt like forever, he allowed himself to relax. He was with Mehak, and that was enough. Adil stared at his phone, the message from Sana burning in his mind. "I know where you are, and I will make sure you regret this, Adil. This isn't over." His grip on the phone tightened as a wave of dread washed over him. Mehak, still curled up beside him on the bed, stirred slightly, sensing his sudden shift in mood. She looked up at him with wide eyes, the fear still haunting her features. "Baba, what's wrong?" Adil quickly put the phone down, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Nothing, Mehak. Just a work message. Everything's fine." But it wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. Sana had made it clear. She wasn't going to let them go easily. Adil knew it was just the beginning. He wasn't sure how far she would go, but one thing was certain. She wouldn't stop until she got what she wanted. Adil's mind raced as he thought of their options. He couldn't keep running forever. At some point, they would have to face Sana, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for the consequences. But he knew one thing. He couldn't let her get to Mehak. He couldn't let her hurt his daughter anymore. As the hours passed, the silence between them was deafening. Adil lay awake, his thoughts racing, trying to come up with a plan. He couldn't just stay here forever. They needed to figure out what to do next, but he was running out of time. He knew that if he stayed in one place too long, Sana would find them. She had a way of getting what she wanted, no matter the cost. Around midnight, there was a soft knock on the door, so quiet it barely registered at first. Adil's heart skipped a beat, his body tensing instantly. He glanced at Mehak, who was now fast asleep, her breathing slow and steady. He didn't want to wake her. But the knock came again, louder this time, almost impatient. He cautiously got out of bed, his hand reaching for the door handle. He didn't know what to expect, but he wasn't taking any chances. He peeked through the small peephole and froze. It was a man, tall and built, with dark sunglasses and a stern expression. Adil's heart sank. This was no ordinary visitor. Who is this? Adil thought, his mind racing. What does he want? The man knocked again, this time more forcefully. I know you're in there, Adil. Open up. Adil's stomach twisted. He didn't know how this man knew his name or where he was, but he wasn't about to open the door. He backed away from the door, his mind whirling with possibilities. Has Sana sent someone after us? He thought, or is this someone else entirely? He grabbed his phone, his fingers trembling as he tried to think of someone to call for help. He couldn't trust anyone, not even his friends. They could be under the control of Sana, or worse, they might betray him. Another knock. More urgent this time. Adil felt the walls closing in on him. Adil, I'm not leaving until we talk. The man's voice came through the door. You need to come with me. It's not safe here. Adil felt his breath catch in his throat. Who are you? He called out, his voice shaky. Why are you here? The man's voice lowered, almost too quiet to hear. "I'm here to help you, Adil. But you need to trust me. Please, open the door." Adil didn't know what to think. This was a situation he couldn't ignore. He couldn't risk opening the door to a stranger, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play. His gut told him that he had to make a decision, and fast. The man spoke again, this time with more urgency. "Adil, listen to me. It's not just Sana you're dealing with. There are others, people who are watching you, people who don't want you to be free. If you don't listen to me, this will only get worse." Adil's mind spun with confusion. Who was this man? And how did he know so much about him and Mehak? Was it true? Were there others after them? His heart raced, but he knew he couldn't ignore the warning. He took a deep breath and slowly opened the door, but just enough to see the man's face. The stranger was tall, wearing a dark jacket and jeans. His expression was serious, no sign of warmth or friendliness. But there was something in his eyes that made Adil hesitate. It was a mix of concern and urgency, as if this was the only option left. "Please," the man urged quietly. "We don't have much time. Sana isn't the only threat here. There are others who are much worse, and they won't stop until they find you." Adil felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He couldn't help but feel the weight of the man's words. This wasn't just about Sana anymore. It was about something bigger, something much more dangerous. Adil glanced back at Mehak, still asleep, her face peaceful in contrast to the storm raging in his mind. He didn't want to drag her into this, but if this man was telling the truth, they had no choice. "I'll help you," Adil said, his voice firm. "But you need to tell me what's going on. Who are these people?" The man hesitated for a moment before stepping closer, his voice lowering to a whisper. "I can't explain everything right now, but there are powerful people involved, people who control everything from the shadows. You're not just running from Sana anymore. You're running from a network that's been watching you for a long time. And if they catch you, it will be over." Adil's head spun. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. What was happening? Who were these people? And what did they want with him and Mehak? The man's voice broke through his thoughts again. "You have to trust me, Adil. I know this sounds crazy, but you have to come with me. I'll keep you safe, but you have to make a decision, now." Adil took a deep breath. There was no time to waste. The danger was closing in. He turned back toward the room, where Mehak still slept. His heart ached at the thought of taking her into a world of uncertainty and danger, but he knew he had no other choice. With a heavy heart, he nodded. "Okay, I'll go with you. But I'm not leaving without my daughter." The man nodded solemnly. "Of course. Let's go." The sun had barely begun to rise when Adil and Mehak arrived at the small, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The man who had come to warn them, still a mystery in many ways, had led them here, assuring them that it was the safest place to hide for now. But Adil couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking straight into the lion's den. He glanced at Mehak, who was still holding onto his hand, her eyes wide with anxiety. She was too young to understand the full scope of what was happening, but she could feel the tension in the air. Adil could tell that she was scared, her small hand trembling slightly as she gripped his tightly. "Baba, where are we going?" Mehak whispered, her voice breaking through the silence of the car ride. Adil didn't know how to answer her. The truth was, he didn't have a solid plan, but he had to keep her safe. That was all that mattered now. "We're going to be okay, Mehak. I promise." They reached the warehouse, its rusted metal walls and cracked windows adding to the sense of foreboding. The man led them inside, a dim light flickering overhead. Inside was empty except for a few scattered crates and a couple of chairs. It felt cold and lifeless, like the calm before a storm. Adil stood in the center of the room, trying to steady his breathing. The man had told him that they would be safe here, but Adil wasn't so sure. Everything had felt like a trap lately. Every step they took only seemed to lead them deeper into danger. "We'll be safe for now," the man said, his voice low and serious. "But we don't have much time. Sana's people are already looking for you. It's only a matter of time before they find us." Adil nodded, his mind racing. "Who are you? Why are you helping us?" The man hesitated for a moment before answering. "My name is Tarek. I'm part of a group that's been monitoring Sana for years. We've been tracking her movements, but we didn't expect you to get caught up in it. You're not just running from her. You're running from a much bigger operation." Adil felt a chill run down his spine. A bigger operation. What was going on? And how had he and Mehak become part of something so dangerous? Before he could ask more questions, the door to the warehouse slammed open with a loud crash, and a group of armed men stormed inside. Adil's heart skipped a beat as he instinctively pulled Mehak behind him, shielding her with his body. His mind was racing. How had they found them so quickly? Tariq stepped in front of them, his face hardening. "I told you we didn't have much time," he muttered under his breath. Adil's pulse was racing. He could hear the footsteps of the men getting closer, their boots echoing on the cold floor. It was over. There was no escape now. One of the men, a tall figure with a scar running down his cheek, stepped forward. He looked at Tariq with a cold smile. "You really think you can hide from us, Tariq?" he sneered. "We know everything about you. You should have stayed out of this." Adil's breath caught in his throat. Who were these people? And why were they after Tariq? Tariq's eyes narrowed, but he didn't flinch. "This is between me and you. Leave them out of it." The man with the scar shook his head. "I'm afraid it's too late for that, Tariq. You've made this personal now." As the men closed in, Adil's mind raced. He couldn't let them take Mehak. He wouldn't let them hurt her, no matter what. He had to do something. Tariq gave a quick nod to Adil, his face hardening. "Get ready. We're not going down without a fight." Adil's heart was pounding in his chest. He wasn't a fighter. He was a father, trying to protect his daughter. But in that moment, he would do anything to keep her safe. Anything. One of the men reached out for Mehak, his hand outstretched, but before he could grab her, Adil lunged at him, knocking him to the ground with all his strength. His body crashed into the man, sending them both tumbling to the floor. Adil's adrenaline surged as he scrambled to his feet. "Mehak!" Adil shouted, turning to see her still standing behind him, frozen in fear. Tariq was already in the thick of it, fighting off two of the attackers with quick, calculated moves. Adil couldn't afford to wait. He rushed over to Mehak, grabbing her by the hand and pulling her behind him again. "We have to get out of here. Now." But before they could make a move, a sharp voice cut through the chaos. "Not so fast." Adil turned to see another figure stepping into the room. Sana. She stood there, her eyes cold and calculating, as if she had been expecting this all along. Her presence was like a sharp knife in the air, cutting through the tension. "You really thought you could escape me, Adil," she said, her voice smooth and venomous. "You've made a mistake. You should have stayed with me. Mehak should have stayed with me." Adil's blood ran cold as he glared at her. "You don't have any right to Mehak. She's my daughter." Sana's lips curled into a sinister smile. "You're wrong, Adil. She's my daughter too, and you're going to regret taking her from me." Tariq, still battling the men, looked over at Adil with a warning in his eyes. "Don't listen to her, Adil. She's manipulative. She'll do anything to get what she wants." Adil's grip on Mehak tightened. He couldn't back down now. He couldn't let Sana take her again. "I'm not leaving without my daughter," Adil said, his voice steady despite the fear rising inside him. Sana's expression darkened, and she took a step forward, her eyes narrowing. "You think you can stand in my way, Adil. You've made a grave mistake." Before she could take another step, Tariq moved swiftly, knocking one of the men to the ground with a powerful kick. The others hesitated, giving Adil the opening he needed. He grabbed Mehak's hand, pulling her toward the door. "We're leaving," Adil said firmly, as the fight continued behind them. He wasn't going to let Sana win. Not now. Not ever. The door slammed shut behind them with a deafening noise, and Adil's heart hammered in his chest. He could hear the chaos erupting inside the warehouse as Sana's men scrambled to regain control. His breath came in shallow gasps, his mind racing with one singular thought. Get out. Get to safety. Whatever it takes. Mehak clung to him, her small fingers gripping his hand like a lifeline. She was silent now, too terrified to speak, her face pale with fear. Adil glanced at her, his heart breaking. He had promised her that they would be okay. But every step they took felt like a race against time. Every second brought them closer to being caught, to being dragged back into that nightmare. Stay close, Mehak, Adil whispered, his voice firm despite the rising panic within him. We're almost there. They reached the end of the alleyway, a small street that would lead them to an old car parked in a nearby lot. Tariq's car. It was their only chance of escape. Adil reached for his phone, his fingers trembling as he dialed Tariq's number. It rang and rang, but no one answered. His stomach twisted in knots. Where is he? A loud crash from behind them snapped Adil's attention back to the warehouse. They weren't safe yet. The men were coming. Come on, Mehak, Adil urged, pulling her toward the car. Hurry. But just as they reached the car, a familiar, cold voice echoed from the shadows. I told you, Adil, you'll never get away from me. Adil froze, his breath caught in his throat. He turned slowly, dread settling deep in his chest. There, standing in front of them, was Sana. She looked different, more dangerous, more determined. Her eyes were dark with fury, her expression twisted with the kind of madness that made Adil's blood run cold. Sana. Adil's voice was strained, barely a whisper. He stepped in front of Mehak, instinctively protecting her from whatever was coming next. Sana stepped closer, her heels clicking on the pavement. You really thought you could just run away from me, didn't you? You and your precious little girl. I'll never let you go. I will make sure you regret this, Adil. Mehak whimpered, clutching his arm, her small body trembling. Baba, I'm scared. Adil squeezed her hand, his mind working furiously. He couldn't let Sana win. Not like this. He had to think, and fast. His eyes darted around, looking for any way out, but there was nothing. The street was empty, the shadows stretching long in the dim light of the early morning. It felt like a trap, one that had been set long ago. Sana's voice cut through his thoughts again. You think I'll let you just walk away after everything you've done? After everything you've taken from me? I'll never forgive you, Adil. Tears welled up in Adil's eyes as he tried to keep his composure. He had no idea what had driven Sana to this point. He couldn't understand how someone could be so consumed by hatred and jealousy. But he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't let her have Mehak. Not now. Not ever. Sana, Adil said, his voice shaking but resolute. This isn't you. You don't have to do this. You don't have to hurt her. Let us go. We can start over. We can make things right. Sana laughed bitterly, her eyes glinting with malice. Make things right. You took everything from me, Adil. Everything. And now you think you can just walk away from it all. You're wrong. Adil's chest tightened as Sana took another step forward. He could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him. He was losing her. He was losing everything. Then something unexpected happened. Behind Sana, the sound of footsteps rang out. Tariq appeared, emerging from the shadows, his face grim but determined. You're not alone, Adil, Tariq called out, his voice steady. I won't let her take you. I won't let her hurt you. Sana turned, her eyes narrowing. You again. I should have known you'd be here. Tariq stepped forward, his posture calm but forceful. It's over, Sana. You've caused enough damage. It's time for you to face the consequences. For a moment, there was a tense silence between them. The only sound the distant hum of the city, Sana's expression faltered for just a split second, as if she were considering something. But then, her anger flared again, her features contorting with rage. "I won't let you ruin everything, Tariq," she snarled. "You don't know what you're dealing with." Tariq's face remained calm, but his eyes hardened. "I know exactly what I'm dealing with, and I won't let you hurt anyone else." Suddenly, Sana lunged at him, her hands reaching for him in a frantic attempt to grab hold. Tariq, faster than Adil could react, sidestepped her and pinned her to the ground with a swift movement. The struggle was brief, but intense. Sana fought, but Tariq was relentless. Adil stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest as he watched the scene unfold. The sound of fighting was deafening, but it seemed like everything slowed down in that moment. His mind was numb, his thoughts scattered, and all he could focus on was Mac, his daughter, the one thing that mattered most in the world. Finally, Tariq stepped back, his face flushed with effort, but calm. Sana was on the ground, breathing heavily, her eyes filled with disbelief and fury. "You think you can stop me? You think you've won?" she hissed. Tariq looked at her, his voice cold. "You've already lost, Sana." Adil could hardly believe it. It was over. For now, at least. But he knew this wasn't the end. Sana wouldn't stop, not until she had exacted her revenge. He could feel it in his bones. With a final glance at Sana, Tariq turned to Adil. "It's time to go. Now." Adil nodded, relief flooding through him, but the weight of what had just happened settled in his chest. Mehak's safety had come at a great cost. But it wasn't over yet. There were still more battles to fight. As they got into the car, Adil took one last look at the warehouse in the rearview mirror. The darkness was still there, lurking. And he knew that no matter how far they ran, the shadows would always follow them. But for now, they were free, and that was enough.